Uh, During the seminar series, we have had a number of contacts with SCOR because SCOR is actually our, would say, facilitator. It's also our evaluator and supporter, of course. And Ed was with SCOR since 2000 for 20 years. He retired in 2020. And he was with RGNO all the time that it existed since 2014. Now, Ed is a scientist. He got his PhD from Delaware.
That's correct.
As in ocean sciences, but then he worked for quite a number of years with the Ocean Study Board of the US Ocean National Research Council before he became the executive director of SCOR in 2000. And since then, he had an enormous opportunity, of course, to get really involved in ocean sciences with so many working groups that covered topics as far apart as fisheries to ocean physics, remote sensing, and to politics even. So he has probably a very broad insight into what ocean sciences involves. Now he's retired and he's still devoting time to capacity building and development. He will talk today about the effort that SCOR does, not just RGNO, many, many more, about capacity building activities of this scientific committee on oceanic research. Thank you, Ed, for joining us, and we are interested in what you have to say.
Okay, thank you, Kurt, for the nice introduction. I have to preface that I agree with Michael that Namibia is a wonderful country, and I appreciate the 3 or 4 times I was able to visit there and be able to see things going on in Swakopmund and Henties Bay. And I want to talk today about the capacity building activities of SCOR to give you a broad overview of what's going on. I particularly focus this on Namibia, but it could be, and it applies to all developing countries where we have a worldwide remit and the ability to help particularly early career scientists and students from any developing country. And I want to talk about support and networking opportunities. So first, I should give you a little background about what is SCOR. SCOR is an international non-governmental organization formed in 1957. This is important in that SCOR is an organization of scientists working together, not governments working together. So this has both benefits and there's things we can't do because we're not intergovernmental like the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. We're focused on advancing ocean science worldwide. So our activities are international. We're supported by 32 national SCOR committees, including from Namibia, and I list here at the bottom of the slide the representatives from Namibia to SCOR. We cooperate with other international organizations to build capacity for ocean science worldwide. Capacity building is not our sole or main focus, but we realize that we need capacity for ocean science worldwide in order to achieve our goals related to ocean science. This is a diagram showing the range of SCOR activities. It breaks out into 4 general areas. We have working groups. There's currently 16 of these, and these focus on specific areas of ocean science where we can make progress in 3 or 4 years by a small group of people. These groups might produce a review paper, peer-reviewed paper, database, software, hold open meetings, and that kind of thing. And I'll talk more about what they do in relation to capacity building later. We have 5 large-scale international research projects. So these projects last 10 to 20 years, and they're focused on a broader area of science, but also bring the international community together to coordinate national research on different topics. And I'll mention a few of these in a minute that are doing capacity building. We have infrastructural projects. These have no set deadline, but they're to help with things that are not research, but help the research community in some way or another. They might bring together data sets or set standards or develop software or that kind of thing. And finally, capacity development is our fourth area, and I'll spend the rest of my time speaking about this. So we have 7 capacity building approaches, which I will discuss in the coming slides, so I won't read through these. But the point here is there are opportunities for Namibian students and scientists and institutions to take advantage of the opportunities that SCOR provides. SCOR has a certain niche in ocean science capacity building, which is different than other international organizations. We cooperate in areas where we have similar goals with IOC or with POGO or some of the other organizations, but we also have our own unique niche. I think one of the most important things SCOR does is we have developing country scientists involved in all of our activities. So this is really an important tool for networking between developed and developing country scientists, and many times developing country scientists make their first contacts through SCOR working groups and other SCOR projects. And this gives opportunities to publish together, network, and plan international activities. So these fall into those other 3 categories that I mentioned of working groups, large-scale research projects, and infrastructural activities. These are all involving developing country scientists. The second area is SCOR research projects. 3 of them regularly have summer schools. So summer schools are a means to get early career scientists together with leaders of the field to learn different methods of related to the research project. And I'll mention the 3 projects here. The GeoTraces project is a project that is documenting the worldwide distribution of trace elements and isotopes. They have a summer school coming up next summer in Bremerhaven, Germany. This will be their 3rd event. The second one is the Integrated Marine Biosphere Research Project, which they have a virtual summer school coming up in August this year, and the registration's already closed. But I wanted to mention it because they have summer schools every 2 or 3 years, and I think this is an opportunity for early career scientists to follow the EMBER project and find out when the next summer school will be. And EMBER covers topics ranging from chemistry all the way up to human interactions with the ocean environment. So I think it could be very relevant to things going on in Namibia. Finally, the 3rd research project that has summer schools is the SOLAS project, Surface Ocean Lower Atmosphere Study. So it looks at interactions between the ocean and the atmosphere. They have a virtual summer school planned for next summer of next year, and then a summer school in person in Cape Verde in the summer of 2023. And I should mention these are all, of course, Northern Hemisphere summer. I apologize for those who have winter in the middle of August. So the 3rd area is SCOR working groups. I mentioned we have 16 working groups going on now, and they're required in their proposals to SCOR to talk about how they will stimulate capacity building in their area through some kind of activity. This particular group, number 146, which was on radioactivity in the ocean, had 2 training courses in China and in France, where they had in-person training on methods related to radioactivity in the ocean. And they also produced 4 e-lectures, which are available online, and you can see from the URL there. And I give a lot of URLs in the presentation that people can go back to and relate to later if you're interested. So in terms of current working groups, there's 4 that I know have some kind of capacity building events going on in the coming year, hopefully. As with everything else, the pandemic has scrambled the plans of these and postponed these events. But we have one working group, 150 on translation of optical measurements into particle content, aggregation, and transfer. Is planning a summer school in South Africa, so that would be nearby for people to participate in. We have one on Working Group 155 on Eastern Boundary Upwelling Systems, has a summer school plan for Senegal. There's the Chlorophyll Fluorescence Group 156 has training workshops planned for Latin America. I'm assuming those would be open to students from other countries, but I'm not certain. And of course, it would be difficult to get there. And then Working Group 157 on DNA of marine zooplankton is an in-person training in Taiwan and virtual training, which will be available. I'll mention at the end of my talk how to follow these groups. Fourth, SCOR supports the travel of developing country students and scientists to ocean science meetings. So we have a grant from the National Science Foundation in the US where meeting organizers can apply to SCOR to get some funding to bring developing countries students to their meetings, wherever they might be held. This is not a program for students to apply directly to SCOR, but it's available for meeting organizers, and then students apply to the meeting for support. And I think most meetings have some travel support available. So this is an opportunity that early career scientists can take advantage of. Number 5, SCOR has a program with the Partnership for Observation of the Global Ocean, POGO, for fellowships for oceanographic observations. We've had this program for 20 years now. It's been very successful. And it allows students and technicians and postdocs, early career scientists, to visit an institution in another country to learn some technique of ocean observations, ocean modeling, use of satellite data, that kind of thing. The visits can last 1 to 3 months, and it's a good way. The purpose is really to help implement the global ocean observing system worldwide. Here's a list of the fellows from 2018. This is the latest list that I had available. And it shows, for example, we have the first one, it's a student from Turkey going to Germany to look at interactions of physical and biological oceanography for 3 months. A student from India going to the UK to look at greenhouse gas measurements. A student from Colombia going to Spain for 2.5 months to look at observation and modeling of hydrodynamic processes. And then a student from Indonesia going to the US for 1 month, again, on a physical oceanography topic. So the idea, in some cases, the students are taking data or samples from their country to the laboratory they're visiting, and they analyze things there. In other cases, they're learning how to do things in the host country, and then they take those techniques back to their country to apply there. So this is an excellent program for developing connections between developing country students and developed country laboratories that often continues after the visit, and often will result in publications. Number 6, SCOR has a program for visiting scholars and sends 3 to 6 visiting scholars each year to teach and mentor in developing countries. We launched this program in 2009 with the idea of enlisting the help of retired scientists to teach and mentor in developing countries. We know that retired scientists like to contribute things they've learned and have more time to devote to this kind of thing. So we thought this would be kind of a program of retired scientists. And we provide up to $2,500 per scholar for travel costs and food, and local hosts are expected to support the lodging of the fellows. So we get some buy-in from the local host. So what we found of the 45 visiting scholars so far, most are not retired. They're actually usually mid to late career scientists who have some time on sabbatical, or they have other opportunities to spend 2 weeks to 2 months in a developing country to teach and mentor. So since 2020, we've had 45 visiting scholars. We found the program to be very cost efficient and that benefits students and institutions in many developing countries. I'm working on a paper with the executive director of POGO right now on visiting scientist programs and how these can be effective. And hopefully that'll be printed in Oceanography later this year, Oceanography magazine. And we hope to expand this program after international travel opens up again. We've decided to continue to call for visiting scholars and approve them and have them, as soon as they're ready to go out, we can send them out. So we'll probably have, I think so far we have 10, which will be going out from the 2020 class and the 2021 class. Will be going to developing countries as soon as travel opens again. This is a figure showing where the visiting scholars are coming from. You can see a lot are from the US and other developed countries, but there are some developing country scientists who also go out, which we're happy to see. And this is a pie chart showing where these visiting scholars have gone. And as you can see, Brazil and Namibia have an equal number of the 45. This is actually 5 for each of those two countries. So one of the, when I was SCOR executive director, we decided that Namibia would be a good place to really focus some effort. So we, particularly after Kurt had been in Namibia on his visiting scholar visit, which I'll mention a bit more in a second, we thought Namibia would be a good place to focus some effort. So we've sent quite a few visiting scholars there, and we've also, expended some other resources to help the situation in Namibia and develop the ocean science there. So visiting scholar visits feature the normal things you would expect from ocean science teaching. There's lectures, there's laboratory work, but I have some pictures here of field work because I think it makes for better pictures. We have sampling for submarine groundwater discharges in Brazil, physical oceanography field trip in Colombia, HAB sampling in Namibia, and a field trip to visit a coastal lagoon in Morocco. Now, in terms of the scholars to Namibia, this is the list. Bert Hanselman, of course, came there twice, and this was an interesting situation because it was early in the visiting scholars program, and we have the opportunity, institutions can apply as well as people that want to serve. So University of Namibia applied to have someone come there, and Kurt applied, and he identified several different possible countries, and we actually matched Kurt with University of Namibia, and they agreed to work together, and so that was for the first trip in 2010, and then Kurt asked if he could go back or the following year to continue his work, and SCOR agreed to fund that trip. And we know from that a lot has developed over the time since 2011 and the 10 years since then, which I'll talk about in a moment. Renee Swift went to both Namibia and South Africa to work on marine mammal acoustics in 2012. He worked with the Namibian Dolphin Project in Namibia. Jacob Larsen from Denmark, from the AOC Center there, worked at both NatMerc and the University of Namibia, giving a course on HAB identifications. So I think so far there's been some interesting, deployments of SCOR visiting scholars to Namibia, which I hope have been helpful. And finally, the research camps, there's been 6 so far in the RGNOs, Research Graduate Networks of Oceanography, established at University of Namibia. And this has been a good cooperative effort between NatMerc and the University of Namibia, using the Mirabilis as well as hosting the final seminar of the students for each program, which has been really a good opportunity for the students, I believe. This is a couple early pictures from the program. This program is supported by the university network, the participants, and which includes the students and the teachers, and with funding from the Agron Institute and the Simons Foundation, which comes through SCOR. So far, close to 63 students and 32 instructors have participated in the course. And you're probably all as much or more aware of this, what's been accomplished through this than I am. But SCOR did, in 2018, we did a site review of the program and talked to people at the university and at Network, and we're satisfied that things were proceeding well and that the RGNO was doing good work there in Namibia. And this is just a collage of pictures from the program. The final, what can people in Namibia and other developing countries do to take opportunities provided by SCOR? It's been frustrating somewhat over the years that I've made presentations, in many developing countries, and still, the opportunities are not well used, I think, by some countries. And so I always like to point out very specific things that can be done. And I think the number one thing is to stay informed about what SCOR and its projects are doing. You can do this very easily by subscribing to the SCOR newsletter and other news. And you can see here the upper banner on the SCOR website. There's a button you can press to sign up for the SCOR email list. By signing up for the list, you'll get the SCOR newsletter and other news that's put out through the email list. And this includes when there's the SCOR Visiting Scholar program, the call for proposals opens up, when the POGO SCOR fellowships open up, when working group meetings are happening, other events. So this is a really important way to stay informed. The second point is to subscribe to the newsletters of any SCOR projects in which you're interested. I mentioned 3 earlier that have capacity building activities, but we have 5 projects that can be followed, and all projects now have newsletters and Twitter feeds and Facebook pages and all that. So it's very easy to follow what's going on with a project, and this is the best way to figure out how to interact with the project. I would say most projects don't have enough interaction from developing country scientists, particularly from Africa. I think there's very few applications for meeting support, for various opportunities that arise. And all the projects realize that Africa is underrepresented, but if people don't ask to be involved, then it's very hard for them to go out and identify people. For administrators involved in this call, I would say there's still opportunities to request a SCOR visiting scholar to come to Namibia. And I would suggest if this were pursued, that person would split time between the university and Network, just to take advantage of the different opportunities in the different places and to help build the cooperation even further. And the way this works is, I mentioned that Kurt, we actually matched him through separate applications from the university. The way it happens more frequently now is that the scholar will say they want to work in a certain place, and they get the university or the institution to submit a support letter, or an institution decides they want someone on a certain topic, and they identify the person and get them to apply for the program. So this can work either way. And I think it's important, if the institutions there need somebody on a certain topic to make this kind of application to make it happen. We do, as I mentioned, we do require that the local host provide lodging. SCOR provides the airfare and some support for local expenses up to the $2,500 US. In terms of the POGO SCOR Fellowship, I think if an early career scientist or technician or an administrator wants to build capacity on a certain observation method, you can, again, try to identify an institution where your person could learn that and then do a joint application for the fellowship program. And this is another opportunity that's, I think, underutilized by a lot of countries. Finally, I think there's opportunities for scientists from Namibia to submit a proposal for a SCOR working group. If you can identify a topic that's relevant to Namibia, but also is globally relevant, SCOR doesn't fund working groups that are just for one region, but for example, we have the Eastern Boundary Current working group, which has members from all the major Eastern Boundary currents of the world, I believe. There might be some other process that goes on in the Benguela Current that's particularly interesting, but also relevant to Chile or some other country. So there's information on the SCOR website about how to do this. There's, and I can also, as well as the SCOR executive director can provide, hints on, how to go about doing a proposal. You need a broad group of people interested, and, particularly some people who have done SCOR working groups before and can help, guide through the process. Finally, this is just some of the connection information, the SCOR website, our Twitter feed. There's a SCOR Facebook page. And again, I think the key to taking advantage of opportunities from SCOR is to actually be informed and stay informed of current activities and opportunities. So that's all I have, and I'm ready to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ed. So much you can offer. So yes. It's here. We just have to make use of it. Okay?
Right.
Now, are there any questions from the audience? Just either put on your camera and your microphone or raise your hand under the reactions. May I start with a question, Ed? Now, I feel sometimes there is competition between all these summer schools and courses going on.
Right.
Why is this, and how could that be somewhat channeled into a common effort?
I think in some ways that's a political question because each organization has its own goals, its own way of doing things. For example, each of our research projects has its own scientific steering committee, and they have their own schedules and their own goals, et cetera. There is, I don't have the link handy, but there is at least a portal for learning about different opportunities. It kind of breaks down by what a student is interested in, and what, that starts to limit the number of things that might be relevant, but there are overlapping. We can't even get our projects to, sometimes they have their open science meetings overlap, and we really don't like when that happens, but it's kind of, everybody's planning somewhat independently, although they inform each other usually about dates, but sometimes it's just beyond the control of an individual project.
How good are the interactions between SCOR and the university programs?
We don't have direct interactions with most universities. It's all, our connections are through scientists. So if, for example, if a university in a developing country wanted to interact with SCOR, we could certainly, figure out how to do that, to the advantage of SCOR and the university. But it's not very common. Sometimes the SCOR National Committee is hosted by a university, and then we might have closer, relations. But it's not that we can't do it. It's just it doesn't happen, very often, because the universities don't know about SCOR, or because we're so focused on, individuals and not institutions or organizations.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
I think Bronwyn had one.
Okay, Bronwyn, go ahead.
Yeah, Ed, you mentioned quite early on in your talk that there were some e-lectures on radio ecology.
Yes.
Are these free? I mean, can you just go on the web and participate in those lectures?
Yes, they're PowerPoint presentations, and you can download those for.
Yeah, at the same time, I might mention the SCOR site or website has so much information. Each working group puts up their programs, puts up their results, etc. And so it's a great source of information. And now, in addition, since Corona, we were all forced to interact virtually. There are a number of good lectures that you can listen there. And also links to websites that have access to free publications. That's particularly important for us in developing countries.
Myself and now the new SCOR executive director are really have tried to keep that up to date and as formative as possible. We have best practices manuals coming up. We put those on the Ocean Best Practices website that IOC maintains, so those are available, to the wider community.
From all the experience you have now over so many years with so many different support activities, particularly for young scientists, what makes an activity successful?
I think some of the best activities are in-person, hands-on, the summer schools, and for example, even the RGNO is a kind of a broader example of a summer school, is getting people together from different countries and different backgrounds and different educational stages to work together and learn together. And we find that besides teaching, the specifics of a topic, that we're creating a network that goes on past the summer school. So those people are then, working together later in their careers. So, and we see that in the US with the different program DISCO and other programs that are for PhD students. And those people are working together years, decades later. So this is really important, and it helps people understand, cultural aspects of science and, how people work together.
I believe so too. In our case with the RGNO, it's also based on doing research. Right? That's particularly important because, as you say, a lot of facilities are not available to developing countries, but they can be made available through collaboration with those who have it. Now I see there is a question by Nancy in the chat. Does one have to be attached to an academic or research organization to qualify for the visiting scholar application?
I can answer that two ways. One is, if you're applying to be a visiting scholar, I would say almost every one we've had is, either, someone who's teaching at a university or is somehow associated with a research institute. We've sent visiting scholars to research institutes that are not directly universities. So I think we had one to institution in Croatia that's doing marine mammal acoustic work. And so we can send to a non-university. It would depend on, kind of the status of that institution in the country. And so we sometimes get applications for the visiting scholar of people that misunderstand what the purpose of the program is, and they more want to learn, they want to go and learn somewhere, but the visiting scholar is to teach and mentor, so they should have some level of experience. And it's, as I said, it's usually mid-career, late career people who can really impart knowledge, in their host country. Does that answer your question, Nancy?
Okay, it partially answers my question, because this will go, especially if we want a recommendation letter from the organization, that is. Because sometimes they say, I see some applications, they say that you have to be, how is it called? You get a letter from your institution. Right. But you find that sometimes, like me, I have been working with Kenya Marine and Fisheries, but I'm not permanently employed. I've been there as a volunteer, so they may not give me an official letter.
Right.
Yeah, so but I have this experience because I've been there for 10 years. I've been doing a lot of research, and I can do the mentorship program, but I cannot have access to the letter. So this is why I asked.
So that's a good question. I guess if you're applying to be a visiting scholar to go somewhere else, the key is to show that you have teaching and mentoring experience that could be valuable somewhere else. I think that's more important than having a current affiliation with a university or a formal affiliation with a university or a research institute. What's happening more, it's fairly rare now that we do the matching. It's usually scholars have already figured out where they want to go, and it's more important to have a letter from the institution you would be teaching at saying they want you to come, and then evidence of your experience in teaching or mentoring and how you could benefit the country that has asked for you to visit.
Okay, are there any more questions? Make use of the fact that Ed is still online here. If this is not the case, then I'd like to thank both speakers of today. So far, this seminar program has covered a lot of scientific aspects, but we also had the courage to listen to political aspects, economic aspects of which we do not understand that much. And now at the end also looked a little bit at the outreach and educational aspect. So that's a great mixture. But for the last 2 afternoons, we go back now to deep science. And we were successful in animating a number of former and possibly potential students for RGNO. And I've asked them to present their work, also part of their career, or their plans of their work in a short showcase presentation. We had more applications for this than we can handle, but we will do 2 afternoons, next Monday and then the Monday after that. And I'm really pleased that we had such a good echo, and I'd like to give those people a good opportunity, also a platform to present what either grew out of what they learned in RGNO or what became out of the samples that they collected. You have heard some of them already, but these last 2 afternoons will be completely devoted to this. I encourage you to look at the announcement on the site. They have all been mentioned there. Their topics are mentioned there. They had to give a short CV, which is also uploaded there. And I hope I can see you there next Monday, June 21st, and then again on June 28th. With this, I'd like to close today's seminars. I thank you for joining us and wish you a good rest of the week.